the color coding on central line catheters.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we have some info on the, like, common colors, and we're going to try to, like, really understand, like, why is this a thing?
Yeah.
What's the practical purpose, for someone like you who's interested in, healthcare,
Yeah.
deficiency, and patient safety, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And, what's interesting about it is, like, on the surface, it seems very simple.
Right.
It's just color coding.
Right.
But when you think about the potential for errors,
Yeah.
it's a really critical,
Absolutely.
like, layer of
Or
safety.
life or death, right?
Absolutely.
Like huge implications if you mess this up.
Absolutely.
So let's start with red.
Okay.
Our sources indicate that red is primarily for blood-related uses.
Makes sense.
Right.
Strong visual association.
Yeah.
Red equals blood.
Red raid. Yeah.
So administering blood or drawing samples.
Absolutely. And think about the risk if you accidentally
Right.
push meds
Right.
through a blood administration line or something like that.
That's a big deal.
Huge problem.
Okay, so then we have blue, which sources say is often used for, like, the general fluid or medication infusions.
Yep. So like your standard IV medication,
Your saline.
your saline, your antibiotics, things like that.
Yeah, your run-of-the-mill stuff goes in the blue.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting how blue often becomes kind of like the default
Okay.
for like routine infusions.
Yeah.
And so that creates a really clear distinction from lines that are dedicated to more specialized treatments.
Okay.
So just that simple color difference can really streamline workflows
Oh, for sure.
and reduce the chance of selecting the wrong lumen, especially, in a code situation.
You're in a rush. You just need to get that in there.
Exactly.
You got to know where to go.
I don't have time to sit there and think about it too hard.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So green typically signals the nutritional therapies like TPN.
Yep, so green is for the food.
Right, into the bloodstream.
Directly into the bloodstream.
So the green is for the food.
Yeah, and that's super important because, TPN, total parenteral nutrition, has a very specific composition.
Right.
It has to be administered in a very particular way.
Yeah.
So keeping it separate visually is really vital for patient safety.
Okay. And now we're getting to like one of the points in the source material that I thought was really interesting,
Okay.
which is the mention of yellow being more variable. So sometimes it's for specific infusions like antibiotics.
Right.
But it almost seems like this highlights that you can't just rely on color.
You absolutely cannot rely on color alone.
Right.
Because while there are these general associations that we've talked about,
Yeah.
Red for blood, blue for fluids,
Right.
green for nutrition,
Yeah.
the specific use of a yellow lumen can actually differ
Oh, wow.
between hospitals, even between manufacturers.
Interesting.
And so this is one of those things where it underscores the importance of you always have to verify
Right.
the intended use based on the local protocols.
Yeah.
Assumptions
Yeah.
can be really dangerous in healthcare.
So it's interesting because the general idea is standardization, right?
Absolutely.
So you've got these multi-lumen catheters, so it's like several channels all coming through one line.
Right?
The color is supposed to tell you like instantly.
Yeah, it's like a visual language.
Okay.
So instead of having to trace back every single line and be like, okay, where does this one go?
You can just look at the color.
Exactly. You look at the color and, okay, this one's for blood, this one's for meds,
Gotcha.
and it minimizes the risk of those mix-ups and misconnections.
So for our listeners out there, understanding this really, I think, shows you just how much attention to detail goes into patient safety in a healthcare setting.
For sure.
It's like this little visual aid
Right. But
that can have a huge impact.
it's all about, preventing those errors before they happen.
Yeah. It's that proactive approach to
Right.
safety.
Yeah.
Thinking about human factors and how our brains work,
Right.
how we process information, and how can we make it easier for ourselves to do the right thing.
Yeah.
Especially when we're stressed out and, things are happening quickly.
Yeah, you're in a killed situation.
Exactly.
You don't have time to sit there and think about it.
You got to be able to react.
So the key takeaway here is that while this color coding follows like some general patterns,
Right.
it's not like a universal absolute rule.
Yeah, it's not like a stop sign.
It's not like a stoplight.
Right, exactly.
It's really a critical safety layer that depends both on these conventions that we've talked about,
Yeah.
but also being really, really strict
Yeah.
about following the specific guidelines.
Local protocols. Every hospital might do it slightly differently.
Yeah.
And it's so important to be aware of those nuances.
And it's fascinating to me to think about how this whole system probably came about, right?
It's probably all this institutional knowledge,
Absolutely.
years and years of people making mistakes and learning from them
Right.
and figuring out how to make things safer.
It makes you wonder what other things are out there, like in other fields,
Yeah.
like in aviation, right?
Okay.
Or even in manufacturing, where there's like these little tiny details that seem really simple on the surface,
Right.
but actually have these huge implications.
Like these color-coded lines.
Yeah, exactly. And they're there to like stop some potentially disastrous chain of events from happening.
It's all about preventing those errors.
Really interesting stuff to think about.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is a great deep dive.
It was fun.
Yeah, I learned a lot.
Me too.
All right, thanks for listening, everybody.
Yeah.